Hello there, I am Micah Sargent, and coming up on Windows Weekly, Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here, and we talk about Microsoft rolling out a preview of Open Jdk. That's right, Microsoft and Java are playing ball, and Mary Jo Foley is very excited about it. Plus, we talk about Paint hitting the store on Windows 10, so you'll be able to download it there and get updates as well. And while we were recording the show, a new build of Windows 10 came out. We talked a little bit about that. Plus Surface Laptop 4 coming and just a few changes there. And virtual build conference for 2021 in May, late May. It's all that plus so much more coming up on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly, episode 719, recorded Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. Project Sous Vide. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. Expand the skills of your IT team and get them the up-to-date certificates they need. Visit itpro.tv/windows for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription. Just use code WW30 at checkout. Hello and welcome to Windows Weekly, the show where we talk all things Microsoft. It's Windows, it's Office, it's Xbox, plus so much more. I am Micah Sargent filling in today for Leo Laporte, and I am joined across the internet by two of the foremost Windows watchers in the world. It's Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com. Hello, Paul.
Hello. How have you been?
I've been all right, hanging in there. A little jealous because I keep seeing you posting your vaccine photos, and
yeah,
one of those is
we're old, so we've been vaccinated.
Yeah,
you gotta protect the oldies.
Speaking of the other vaccinated person on the podcast, Mary Jo Foley of All About Microsoft on ZDNet. Hello, Mary Jo.
Hello, Micah. Nice to see you. We haven't seen you in a while.
It has been a while, wild enough that people don't really take vacations during the pandemic, or very rarely do. Mm-hmm. So there hasn't really been a need for me to step in, but glad to be here today. Glad to talk Windows with you, ostensibly. And we started the show today with some software.
I love that. Sorry to interrupt, but Open JDK somehow made its way to the top of the lens here.
Paul,
guys, listen.
I'm with you.
No. Okay, here are our choices. Open JDK, which is a huge deal, or Microsoft Paint goes to the store.
Thank you. The obvious.
What?
Oh, if it had been Notepad, no problem. But
yeah, exactly.
Paint is not good enough.
Paint. Honestly, Paint is like meme status at this point. I kind of do feel like it should be the top. But all right, I want to know, Mary Jo.
We'll see how we can be our best Windows users that we can be without using Paint. But okay, fine. We'll talk about Open JDK.
Mary Jo, I want to hear about why Open JDK, what does that stand for?
Open Java Development Kit. It's about Java.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotcha. So yes, huge. Tell me about Open JDK.
So the reason I thought this should be the top of the show is when you think about Microsoft and Java, if you're old, like us vaccinated people, you have very negative connotations about this, right? Like you remember there was like legal wars, Sun suing Microsoft, Visual J++. Like there's a lot of really bad history around Microsoft
we call this
and
the good
Java.
Old days.
Oh, maybe you can call it. It was the fun days for us covering Java wars. It was fun as a reporter, right? But if you were a developer, it wasn't that great a time, really, because you couldn't really figure out where's Microsoft going with this, right? It's funny. Yesterday, Taro Elhonen, who always listens to the show, he sent me a link to one of my own stories from 2000, where it was all about Sun and Microsoft and all the legal wranglings around Java and how it was just dragging on and on and on. And I'm like, yep, those were the fun days. That
we all miss Scott McNeely, don't we? A little bit.
Yeah, we do.
That instigator.
No, it was great. He would just say like the most outrageous things, and then Microsoft and Sun got into like legal tussles, and I saw Jim Cullinan quoted in my story. Remember him? One of the original Microsoft PR guys who was part of the antitrust trial as well. So there's like so much bad blood with Microsoft and Java, right? And then yesterday, they put out a press release and say, hey guys, here's the Microsoft preview build of OpenJDK. And so many people were posting like hell freezes over memes.
Oh God, get over it, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's like, wait, they're back in Java and Microsoft's post about this made some interesting points. So not everyone thinks of Microsoft and Java as like peanut butter and chocolate. They don't think of it like that, right?
They don't jive like Java. They don't jive with Java.
They don't. But then Microsoft posts this thing that says, by the way, we use Java extensively in Azure, SQL Server, Yammer, LinkedIn, Minecraft. Like they're just listing things over like a whole list. We have 1,000 developers working on Android apps who all rely on Java inside Microsoft. We have a Java engineering group, right? So here's our Open Jdk preview. I think it was a huge deal. I was surprised that I kind of thought they were going to do it. Guys, this is big. This is really big.
So I'm starting to understand now. Basically, because of the fact it's like it's like the time that Apple had Bill Gates on stage virtually talking about, I think it was Office, right? At the time. Right. These are two folks who you are used to not getting along, actually getting along for the sake of that. But so when you say that they said that Java is used as part of this, that, and the other, Azure, SQL Server, was that not known before, or was it that they just didn't sort of point it out? They didn't acknowledge it.
They've said it in like things like build, sometimes like in slides in a build session, but they don't really try to come out publicly and say Microsoft loves Java the way they do with Linux, right? There's no like little Microsoft Heart Java things that I've seen. Gotcha. Maybe there's some swag somewhere that I haven't seen. And if there is, I would like some. Anybody who wants to send it to me, that would be cool. But yeah, I feel like some people knew, but not everybody knew about it.
And now everyone knows about it because you made it the first topic. That's good.
Guys, is this really controversial? Paint versus Microsoft and Java? Really?
I think it's just more fun to razz you now.
Bust my chops.
Yeah,
you're busting
exactly.
my chops.
Well, okay, but actually, this is kind of good timing because there's a bunch of Java stuff in the news this week as well.
There is. Right.
And the other thing is, when you put this in the notes, it caused me to go back and look at what I had written. And about a year and a half ago, I did that Programming Windows series. And I kind of, in fact, I don't know if I can find it, but somewhere down there is Visual J++, which was Microsoft's late 90s Java development environment, the thing that got them in trouble with Sun. Right. And, Microsoft at the time was accused of subverting Java, and Microsoft would have called it extending Java, but the first version of that product was, kind of basic, but the idea was something that's very familiar today. You write in a high level language and the thing at the end spits out HTML code. It was designed for the web, and Visual J++ 1.0 at the time, that's what it did. And it was, it was actually pretty cool for what it was. But the thing I have down there is Visual J++ 6.0, which is actually the second version, which they, as I recall, renumbered it to match the numbering scheme of Visual Studio. So Visual Basic 6, Visual C++, Visual Basic, and now Visual J++ all got amped up to 6. And the thing that's classic about this is a moment in time that nobody remembers. But this thing was a complete application development environment that used Java as the language. You have to kind of go back in time to understand how important this was, because at the time, Microsoft only had one truly visual tool, which was Visual Basic. And the big, complaint against Visual Basic at that time, over all time, really, it was the quality of the language, right? It's not exactly a sophisticated programming language. It certainly wasn't then. And so there were C++ developers who wanted like a truly visual C++. And they never got that, by the way, ever. But Microsoft eventually moved on to C# because of losing the case with Java, with Sun over Java. But for a brief shining moment of time, Java was their language, and they created this thing that could create Windows applications using Java. It was awesome for the day. It was awesome. And
it's funny because I saw there were people on Twitter yesterday saying, does this mean Microsoft's going to bring back Visual J++? The guy, Bruno Borges, who's instrumental in Java at Microsoft, he's like, you know what? We've moved on.
Yeah, the whole world has moved on. I mean, Java has very specific use cases for sure. And of course, it's used in Android. In Android, a lot of Android apps to date have been written in Java, especially. But I mean, I would say it probably has a lot more use in enterprise scenarios, up in the cloud services, and so forth. And that's why Microsoft is using it with Azure. But back in the day,
Paul, tell me this isn't big. Microsoft currently deploys 500,000 Java virtual machines.
So that's a big number.
It's literally
big. I guess
that's a big number.
I need to hear the context of it, though, because what are the number of virtual machines that are running other environments?
Right, that we don't know. Right, compared to.
But look, Microsoft is agnostic about this stuff today. This is the hell freezes over people that they don't understand this in 2021 blows my mind. But
I know.
Long ago.
They just like Oscar with the flames behind him in the dumpster.
Yes, right. Nothing to see here.
Right.
Yeah, so I miss those days a lot. I have to say,
Me too.
I enjoyed. I saw Scott McNeely was
great.
A rabble rouser. He was an amazing speaker. He was hilarious because he wasn't a tech guy, right? Most tech guys are really boring, and he was very fiery, and he was more of a.
By the end, though, it was kind of tired, right? Because you could predict.
Oh yeah,
he was kind of like Stuart Butterfield at Slack talking about Microsoft.
So when you're the notion that a company like Sun could be an underdog is kind of crazy, but they were, I guess, in personal computing for sure. And you need the boogeyman you can point to and say this is everything that's wrong with our industry. Look what they're doing, blah blah blah, whatever. And I'll just leave it at I think what Microsoft did with Java at that time was incredible. And were they trying to subvert Java or whatever, embrace and extend? Yeah, I'm sure they were.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure they were. They were terrible.
I mean, I wrote, and you probably did too, so many stories about Microsoft's intent to embrace and extend Java. Like that, I could just remember that in my sleep about everybody claiming that. And then some people saying, no, that's not what they're doing. And then Microsoft being really coy about the whole thing. And then up comes C++, C#, right?
I think where they got in trouble was probably, now that I'm sort of thinking about it again, there was this notion of a Java runtime, which I'm confusing with JDK, by the way, but maybe it was called JDK. But anyway, maybe it was part of the JDK. But, they were extending that. And Java or Sun's deal was like, look, no, you have to have pure Java. It has to be the real thing. And at some point, Microsoft offered... They tried to switch over to the pure Java SDK or whatever it was called, JDK, whatever. And obviously you couldn't do the Windows application stuff they were doing. And by the way, that's why Anders Heilsberg worked on J++, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, that's why he created C# in essence and .NET. And that's why that stuff happened, because they lost this battle with Sun over Java. This was the way they were going to move forward. Yeah, they had to that's .NET and C# happened, know.
Yep.
Rather incredible. But anyway, that's
I know.
Yeah, it's over 20 years ago.
Yeah, but
the only thing I remember about Java is trying to install an app on my Windows PC when back in high school, and it didn't work unless I went and installed the latest version of Java, and so I had to go.
There were all kinds of versioning problems. They also had skinning problems, because remember the promise to Java applications was that you could write once, run anywhere. So to do that, there had to be a capability in the system for it to look like a Windows app or a Mac app or whatever other environments it supported. And that stuff was always kind of a little behind, and they didn't always look native. They didn't run very fast. It was basically a virtual machine type of situation or a sandboxing type situation. All of which is, by the way, is very common and is
that's true.
Is .NET and C# and it's all, a lot of modern programming languages.
Let's see what is next. We've got some semi-related stories.
Yeah, so just here. Because Mary Jo forced the issue in Java, I thought. No,
everyone's very happy about it, guys.
They are.
I don't know that I normally would have discussed these two things, but they are semi-related. Right? So cheering. Oracle acquired Sun Microsystems almost 20 years ago, a long time ago. and of course got Java with it. So Oracle controls Java. Google took the Java source code and created Android, the APIs for Android. Not all of them, but I mean that, they took some of the basic API stuff that you would need to do anything like, string work and whatever. And they used it because that was their understanding of how the license worked, associate open source or something like open source, I guess. And right before it was acquired, Sun actually launched a lawsuit against Google over this. And Oracle, rather than being a good Silicon Valley citizen, decided they would continue this. They've been fighting this thing forever. I don't know if this is interesting to anybody or not. I'm not sure if this means anything. I'm not a legal guy, but every time a jury, this has been put before a jury, they have ruled in Google's favor. But every time it's gone to appeal, Oracle has won. So Google appealed it to the Supreme Court of the United States. They announced, I think about a year ago, January, that they were going to take on this case. And this week, I guess, they announced the result, which was that there were two issues, I guess. One was whether software code is even copyrightable. They decided not to rule on that. But regardless, whether Google's use of the Java source code in Android constituted fair use, and they ruled that it did. So Oracle has lost. I don't think anyone's going to cry over Oracle losing anything, but there you go.
You could bet they're going to try something to get around this, right?
But concurrent to this, so many companies here.
Did you say
Google
Sun?
has been trying to move past Java because probably in part because it doesn't control it and because it's not truly open source or whatever, but they have adopted something called Kotlin for new application development. And they've been redoing a lot of the APIs in Kotlin, et cetera, et cetera. Probably as a hedge against this. I mean, who knows if they had lost what they would have had to have done or whatever. But that's for applications. Like what a lot of people don't realize is that, Java or Kotlin to Android is like Swift or Objective-C back in the day or Swift UI is today on iOS or Apple devices is like, UWP and C# is for Windows applications or whatever. It's kind of a high level environment in which you create apps. The underpinnings of Android are actually written in C and C++. And that's not a secret. We've known that for a long time. But I like that they came out and kind of explained this this past week because they're adding Rust as a fully supported language for the underpinning parts of Android. And they're going to be, creating new, I don't know if they're technical, I guess we'll call them APIs, will be written in Rust, not in C or C++, sorry. The theory there being that there's memory protection and so forth, but it doesn't have any performance penalties because things like Java or C#, because they're protecting application processes or just memory in general, the deallocating memory automatically, doing garbage collection, whatever it is, there's an overhead to that. And I guess Rust has some of those capabilities, but it doesn't have a performance problem. So this would have been, it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm glad you're here, and Micah, don't get me wrong, but I know Leo would be very interested in this topic. Leo is, I believe, learning Rust as we speak. And I don't know anything about it, but it was kind of interesting out of the blue. Oracle lost the case and they're like, hey, by the way, we're moving to Rust too. So it's like we have a replacement for Java and now we have a replacement for C and C++.
Yeah. Microsoft's huge into Rust. You know that, right? Like they're really putting a lot of eggs in the Rust basket.
I guess it's a great language. I like I said, I literally don't know anything about it. Just that it exists.
Exactly. I was going to say that's kind of my extent of it too. I see a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about it. People like to talk about, I was using Rust. Can't wait.
If you're getting into a debate about Rust versus any of the programming language, you've entered a new kind of nerddom that,
See, I could have made that the top story, Rust versus Java, but I didn't.
Rust versus Java. Why would they roll out OpenJDK when Rust exists? What is wrong with those people?
It's a preview. It's here. The world shattered.
Right.
So that brings us to another very important story.
Thank you.
Paint is heading to the store and my mind is blown.
Yeah, this one has a history too, right? Because I guess it was about 4 years ago, back in the creator update frenzy of the Terry Myerson years, Microsoft was adding all these 3D tools to Windows 10, And they were like, yeah, we're going to get rid of Paint. And people are like, wait, what are you talking about? I use Paint personally, I use Paint every single day. Every day. There's not a day that goes by I don't use Paint. It's just part of my workflow. It's pinned to my taskbar. So there were so many people that complained that they said, oh, don't worry. We're going to put it in the store. Like, you'll always be able to get it. So even though it won't come in Windows, you'll be able to go to the Windows store. Now it's the Microsoft store. And you'll be able to get it. So don't worry. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess it's better than nothing, whatever. Years went by, right?
Yeah.
And then one day they were like, okay, you know what? Actually, and I think what happened was they realized these creators things didn't fly at all. We'll just leave Paint in there. But we're still going to put it in the store, and it will be updated through the store, right? Now that causes a different kind of hand wringing, because it's like, well, hold on a second. Why do you need to update it through the store? I mean, for things like a web browser, like Microsoft Edge, or even like various system components, you could make an argument that updating or upgrading those things more than twice a year, which is the Windows 10 release cycle, is probably advantageous. But for a tool like Paint, which literally dates back to, I don't know what it was called in the beginning, like PC Paintbrush or something in the late 1980s. I don't know that we're looking for stuff anymore. I mean, I guess you could support some modern web graphical formats or something, but I mean, I don't quite see the need for this kind of thing. Notepad falls into the same category.
Exactly.
Microsoft's doing the same thing with Notepad.
So let me throw a question in here, and it's kind of a hypothetical question, I guess, but why don't they take things like Notepad and Paint and put them in the feature experience pack thing, or whatever that thing is called now?
Right.
And then you have things that are updated independently from the operating system together, right? And then you don't have to be going to the store independently for all these different apps all the time for updates.
I mean, I can't answer that question, obviously. I mean, we could just speculate, but what the heck? That's what we do here. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the point.
So for those who are unfamiliar, Microsoft obviously has various methods for updating Windows 10, just like Google does for Android, just like Apple does for its various operating systems. And what they found is that pushing everything on the OS release cycle doesn't work, for everything, right? That there are things you need to update more. So Edge has been pulled out, obviously. And then this feature, but then, apps are in their own thing. The feature experience pack thing, literally, it's one of the rare times where a Microsoft name makes sense, are like features. Like it's not necessarily a standalone .exe thing, but it's a feature of something that's core to the OS, like some kind of screenshotting capability or,
except
whatever.
Snipping Tool, right? Snipping Tool is in there.
Snipping Tool technically is an app, but it's kind of a system capability. It integrates with, some of the keyboard shortcuts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So my guess is the reason they put them in the store, even though it doesn't actually make a lot of sense, is that they're apps, and that's where we update apps. Like they're full apps. Like I think a lot of the stuff, at least what we've seen so far, because remember, it's been very vague. The feature experience packs that we know about, that we've been testing through the Insider program, are nothing monumental. Like they're little system components. I don't know what else to call them.
So far,
features. They're features.
Right.
So that's my guess, but I don't actually.
Maybe,
I don't know.
But so then I saw people today, because of Paint going to the store, people saying, I thought some reporters, they mean me, said the store was dead. And so I'm like, well, I didn't say that, actually. What I said was Microsoft was going to do away with the store for business and store for education. But I didn't say they were doing away with the store, like the main store.
Right. I don't, oh boy, how do I say this? Like the Microsoft store, as we call it now, has never been like a AAA experience per se. No. Although if you were to open it today on your Windows 10 PC, it's a lot better looking than it was a few years ago, even in the sense that there are a lot of modern games are in there. All the top level apps, the Netflixes, Hulus, et cetera, are all there for the most part. It's not full of, it's not like it was when Windows 8 launched or when Windows 10 launched, when it was like, 127 farting apps and whatever nonsense was in there.
Right.
But, I'm right now, I was just telling Brad this morning, but I'm evaluating a Mac, like an M1 MacBook Pro, and Apple, like Microsoft, because they had done this on their mobile platforms, decided several years ago, I don't remember when exactly, to put a Mac app store in the Mac. So it's very much like the Windows Store or the Microsoft Store now. And it was always kind of lackluster, second rate, and maybe it still is. I mean, but I will say, I was looking at it last night, and honestly, it looks a lot better than the Microsoft Store in the sense that it's better organized. There seems like there's more stuff there. And I don't feel like that was always the case. I mean, I kind of relook at this thing every couple of years or whatever, and it's like,
you're dead on. It used to
so
be,
it has gotten better.
Yeah, it used to be that there were far fewer apps or apps made by kind of more obscure folks, and so it was just kind of not entirely, but a lot the time it was just a junk drop.
Sorry, I think I'm suffering. And my post-vaccination problem here. The Mac market is interesting, at least as seen through the lens of the Mac App Store, because it seems like there's like a crazy number of like markdown-based text editors and note-taking apps and, that kind of stuff. Like for some reason, it was kind of heavy on that end of the equation. We don't get almost any of that in the Microsoft Store. But again, looking at what's that?
What's there? What do you mostly get in the store? Well,
these days, honestly, it's games. They want to sell Microsoft 365.
But you know what? It's not. You know what's not in the store? And I just ran into this today because I had to uninstall Teams and I went to reinstall it and I went to the store and I'm like, no, Teams isn't in the store.
Teams you got to get from Microsoft, from the website, right?
Wouldn't you think Teams would be in the store?
That's weird.
It's a weird. Well, the other thing you got to understand is even though you're not technically doing it right through this storefront,
I know
you can buy hardware through the store, like PC.
You can buy a lot of weird stuff through the store.
Yeah, and there's movies, right? Because Microsoft still has a movie store. So, like in the Apple world, or in actually Google does this. Apple has a separate store for content. Actually, probably multiple stores, I guess, but Google has like a Play Store that has apps and games for Android, and it also has audiobooks and ebooks and movies and TV shows, and they don't sell music anymore, but when they had music, they used to do music too. I don't know. There are different ways of doing this. All I'm saying is the Microsoft Store has slowly gotten better for sure. There's no doubt about it. But looking at the Mac Store anew, I'm like, wow, actually, that's gotten significantly better from what I can see. I'm not in there every day looking at it, but.
And I think it took some time because you kind of how it used to work was Apple would work really closely with certain developers to make sure that those apps were on the Mac App Store. And now that Apple has improved, because that was one of their focuses, I think, in the last sort of rollout of operating system software, they made it a lot easier and a lot better to actually put your app in the App Store. So a lot of big names ended up being in the App Store where they weren't before.
You go to the Mac App Store and you can download Microsoft Word just by itself, which is something you cannot do from Microsoft, which is bizarre to me.
Yeah.
So it's, and then I don't know required to get the package if you get it from.
Yeah, but you can't get that from the store. You can purchase a subscription through the store. But then you have to go to the website to download the software. It's weird.
It's weird.
And I suppose there's also one of the things I thought that was neat about the Microsoft Store still is neat. If you use a tool like Adobe Photoshop Elements, for example, that thing now gets this licensing that's from the store. So I don't know how it is now if you just buy it standalone. But back in the day, a couple of years ago, you would buy it. You could put it on maybe 2 PCs. It was that, and you had to be really careful about authorizing and deauthorizing and all that stuff. But when you buy it through the store, it's just whatever. You're free to go. You can put it on as many computers as you have, no problem. I like that. But I suspect, Adobe with their CC stuff, and they have mobile subscriptions now as well. I don't know how that stuff works in the context of stores. I bet it doesn't work at all. Like, I don't see how Adobe wants to do their own thing, obviously, right? And they certainly don't want Apple or Microsoft to get a chunk of that. So I suspect, I don't know for a fact, but I bet if you're if you want to buy an Adobe CC subscription, you're not doing that through either of those stores. You probably have to go to adobe.com or whatever on the web.
Yeah, I would imagine, because that's with I have CC, and that is all handled by Adobe.
Yeah, they have their own thing, and they have their own updater. As you know,
yes,
of course they do. Yeah.
Well, and Microsoft's they're not even requiring app vendors to put their apps in the store anymore, right? Like, with the new, new versions of Windows 10 coming and 10X, I believe, you'll be able to circumvent the store, right? So
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, but here's what you can get in the store: Paint. And Notepad. So there you go.
I know. Is it the only way to get Paint now, or like will it be?
Well, no, it's so they're going to keep. Sorry, I should say, Paint is now going to continue to be part of Windows. It's going to be serviced through the store.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never even tried to do this, but yeah, you can. In fact, you soon will be able to download it from the store. Which is kind of strange. I don't know what the point of that. I suppose you could uninstall it somehow. But Paint 3D. Is being removed from Windows 10.
Right.
As well as whatever the other 3D thing was.
The viewer.
3D viewer. And those applications will be available in the store going forward and will presumably be updated or at least certainly serviced that way. Where they can just rot in silence because nobody can.
They're not, on your desktop getting in your way.
Yep.
Let's take a quick break before we come back with loads more news. I want to tell you about IT Pro TV, who are bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. Now, whether you run a business or you're looking to be employed, you know that you constantly have to stay up to date on the latest trends in your field of expertise. And the same goes for IT teams. So you can build your IT team to be ready for any challenge with IT Pro TV. Not only can you get your team the most recent certificates and training in IT, but you can also make sure they stay on track. You can track your team's results so you can prove the ROI of your training spend with the Pro Portal, which lets you manage your seats, assign and unassigned team members, and access monthly usage reports. That way you can see metrics like logins, viewing time, courses viewed, tracks completed, and more. You can easily manage your teams, so that way you can manage your subsets of users by providing them with the customized assignments, monitoring progress, and reporting on usage of the platform. Assignments can be full courses or individual episodes within courses. You can choose to download data in a convenient CSV for more advanced reporting needs, and those advanced reporting needs include getting immediate insight into your team's viewing patterns and progress over any period of time with visual reports. Dynamic reports are updated weekly, monthly, and quarterly. That way you can sign up for email alerts to be notified when reports are ready. Your team's detailed viewing activity is at your fingertips in a CSV download for any report type. Individuals and teams will have fun while they learn. With 7 studios now and more than 5,800 hours of engaging video training, IT Pro TV is the best online IT training platform to keep your employees motivated. IT Pro TV is focusing on Linux for the month of April. They'll be having 2 Linux-related webinars and a Linux free weekend on April 17th to the 18th. And if you have been checking out IT Pro TV's podcast, Technado, with Don Pizzette, they're celebrating the 200th episode of the podcast, April 22nd, with a live show and some giveaways. You don't want to miss it. If you're interested in learning IT or getting certified for the IT job you want, you'll absolutely benefit from IT Pro TV. Start or advance your IT career today. Go to itpro.tv/windows and use code WW30 to receive 30% off all consumer subscriptions. That's itpro.tv/windows with the code WW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV, build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. Thanks so much to IT Pro TV for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. All right, where are we here? Do we mention that there's no new test build yet for Windows 10?
Yeah, not today so far, but I think there's going to be one later. I do.
Yeah,
so it could still come out. Now, test builds, these are ones that sometimes include new features, sometimes don't, or...
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So
yeah, we've had mostly no new features, but
I know.
We've had a couple of weeks.
Every once in a while, right? There were rumors that today's build might have to do with ARM, which would be kind of interesting. The x64 stuff on ARM in emulation. But yeah, it's just kind of hit or miss when you get new features at this point.
Is there a given time that these usually come out, or could it just be any time on the day that you expect it?
So a lot of times Microsoft puts out a test build right before Windows Weekly. Not because of Windows Weekly, but 1 p.m. Eastern.
Got to keep us scrambling.
Yeah, but I sometimes they don't. It's not ready, or they haven't finished the blog post, whatever. So yeah, maybe later today, maybe tomorrow. Who knows?
Okay. Well, up next, you're telling me that Elvis is outdated now.
Well,
which is a little frustrating.
First of all, do you have an AMD or an Intel processor in your
crud, I can't remember which one I ended up getting.
Is it open and running?
It is open.
How big
and running.
do you have 15-inch or 13.5?
Oh, 13-inch.
So it could be either one, right? No,
so right click on the start. Right click start.
Right click start. Okay.
And then choose system. And it will tell you.
Oh, there it is.
Among other things.
It has to be Intel.
Intel. Yeah.
Intel, yeah. So good.
Wasn't it?
So
wasn't it with laptop 3 Intel? Like you had to have Intel? I can't remember now, but.
Yeah, I was literally going to ask you this question. So, Mary Jo, you bought a Surface Laptop 3.
13.5 inch. Yep.
And you have
Intel.
And you bought it just direct from the store or whatever?
I bought it. How did I buy it? Did I buy it from Amazon or Microsoft? I think I bought it from Microsoft store.
And do you know if you have an Intel or a?
I do know. I have an Intel, and
Intel.
Right. When they offered review units of the laptop 3, I think the only ones that came with AMD processors were the 15-inch. I don't think you could get.
I think that's what I remember too.
So if that's the case, then you could get Intel, but you had to go through the Microsoft Microsoft Store for Business. And I think it was $100 extra or something like that. Unfortunately, the AMD chipsets that they used in those products were terrible. They were for the day last gen. They weren't new. Yep. They were not particularly good. And a lot of the advice you would have seen in reviews was make sure you get the Intel version. The good news is that since then, AMD released a newer series of its Ryzen processors, the 4000 series for mobile. And machines based on that chipset are fantastic. Like it's a huge leap, and that's great. The problem is, since then, they've released a 5000 series. And of course, the Surface Laptop is going to ship with the 4000 series, the next one, because, Microsoft. But other than that, and on the Intel side, obviously, you're going to see 11th gen core processors. So based on all the rumors and whatever, it's going to be identical to the Surface Laptop 3 otherwise, right? So we're not getting Thunderbolt 3. They're not adding ports or anything like that. It's just the chipsets are different. So honestly, on the AMD side, it's still good news. It's just weird the way they do those kinds of things. But the existence of this product was confirmed on the Microsoft website because the Walking Cat, who we often reference here, pointed out on Twitter that the support pages for both those products are now available, the AMD and the Intel versions of Surface Laptop 4, even though there's nothing there yet. It's just a kind of a placeholder. So it's happening. And I think maybe the fact that those sites are live now might suggest that maybe there's going to be an announcement soon.
Yeah, I would guess.
And I can tell you we're not all going to New York, so it's probably going to be like a virtual announcement.
Yeah. You know what? If and when the spring Surface event happens virtually or whatever, I'm more excited about the peripherals than I am about the laptop, because there's rumored to be the new Surface headphones, which are possibly called Surface Headphone 2 Plus. And Brad at Petri has heard there could be a Surface or at least a Microsoft branded webcam as another.
Oh, finally.
Now, you had been talking about this for a little while now. Yep. One that potentially offers hello support, right?
I know. Right. I would guess it would, right?
Especially with Teams being such a heavy focus. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a dadgum button on it that you can press or that launches Teams, or it has like a built-in gesture. If you wave at the webcam with your hand turned backward, it will.
That's what we need for Teams assistants. Hey, Teams.
It looks like you're trying to launch Teams with this rude hand gesture.
You're not? Well, you're going to anyway.
Or maybe if you make the letter T.
Yeah. Teams.
It automatically launches Teams. No, Brad
that would not be
heard
the gesture I would use at this thing, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah. We don't want to see your gesture, but No, Brad had heard even there could be like Teams certification for the headphones, I believe, which would be kind of interesting too. Like a Teams.
What would that mean?
Device.
Does it just mean it's got good noise cancellation or something like that?
It's been proven to be really good for business use for Teams, like a lot of the Teams certified.
That'd make it handy for businesses. They could just buy their employees these to make sure that Teams, goes well. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
What other peripherals? Would there be a new pen?
Yeah, there's a rumor that there's
actually,
a new pen.
For the education version, the one that looks like a carpenter's pencil, I think is going to be updated. As part
the pen.
This is all rumored. I mean, Microsoft
pen.
Obviously hasn't said anything about any of this.
No, they haven't.
Yeah, all speculation.
Yeah,
but
but
so
usually
not
the
just Surface
spring launch is kind of a smaller Surface launch, like stuff.
Yeah.
In the olden days, it used to be for graduations and Father's Day and Mother's Day gifts, right?
Right.
But now, well, maybe it still could be for those things, right? You could still online order it. It's just not the same as
April
like
showers bring Surface peripherals. We all know that.
Yeah, everyone could bring a webcam as a shower or a wedding gift. Perfect gift for the June wedding.
My son is graduating from college in about a month, and if I don't get to go to this thing and see it in person after paying his tuition for 5 years, I'm gonna. I know. I'm not gonna say gonna murder somebody exactly, but. It's not going to be
right.
fun.
You don't want to say that so that when
I don't know if I can. We're going to drive up to the place, but I mean, I literally might not be allowed to go inside the building.
Oh, wow.
Just going to knock on the door. Let me in.
Excuse me.
You could hold your.
Do you have any idea how many Porsches I could have bought with this money?
Right.
Seriously.
I have funded this building. Mm-hmm. This sod is mine.
Exactly. Is my name on the building? Because if it isn't, I'm going inside. So slim pen. Someone in the chat asked, why not use the headphones that are used with the Xbox? Is there any reason to not use those, or is that just another option? I mean, you could. They're not going to be Teams certified, obviously, and it is a little weird that Microsoft, when they released the first two versions of Surface headphones and then Surface earbuds as well, did not make them Xbox compatible for some reason.
That is weird.
It is. They're a strange company. My Xbox has its own protocols and special chipsets and so forth for this kind of thing. So that might be part of it. Maybe would have raised the price too much in either direction, but why not? There's no doubt you could do that as an individual. Yeah. And those are only $99.
Even the first generation of the headphones, they didn't really tout them as something you would use to do a Teams call, right? It was more like noise canceling so that you could use it to keep all extraneous noise away.
Yeah, back then it was because we were all working in open workspaces and there were people all around us. And of course we needed that silence or whatever. And that kind of went by the wayside.
Right.
I don't remember what happened. I did this. So I went to Washington, D.C. a couple weekends ago, as you know, Mary Jo. And one of the lines I got to use multiple times was I went into like these restaurants that I love and I know the people there and everything. And I'm like, hey, I haven't been here in over a year. I don't know if you know what's going on outside. There's a pandemic. Anyway, they were like, yeah, we know. We know. Anyhow, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
No, I still thought that Microsoft at some point would come out with something that looked like a Jabra headset, for work. Right. For people who have to do like a lot of business calls, not so much the over-the-ear headphones, more like
Well, the Surface earbuds are probably as close as we get to that. Yeah. But they're for both ears, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, up next, we're going to talk about the cloud. It is time to talk about the cloud. It appears there have been some Microsoft services outages lately.
Not that anyone's noticed or complained.
Why is Azure on the fritz?
Oh, man. And the worst part was the latest Azure issue happened on April Fool's Day, right? So
wow.
Like I'm sitting there, it's like 5 p.m. and I see people going, why is Azure down? And I'm like, April Fool's, right? And they're like, no, it really is down. And I was like, oh man, are you kidding? and so I just to test it, I typed in, I don't even know why I did this. I typed in bing.com and I couldn't get to Bing. And I'm like, yeah, so probably a lot of things are down, right? And it was like anything with an Azure connection was down pretty much. Like Xbox Live was down, Microsoft 365 was down, and it was down worldwide for an hour. What it turned out to be, as it always is DNS, right? Everybody's like, it's always DNS, right? But this time, it's a little bit interesting when you look at the Microsoft root cause analysis of this, because they don't say it was an attack, right? But they say there was an anomalous surge in DNS queries from across the globe targeting a set of domains hosted on Azure. I'm like, oh, so it was an attack, right? And they will not say it was an attack.
Interesting.
But they say that they had a way of doing caching and routing traffic that didn't kick in the way that they thought it was going to. And so they did take responsibility, and they said, and it was an hour plus, so it wasn't like a really long outage. But it was a pretty bad outage. It took down a lot of things.
I mean, it wasn't an Xbox outage, so... okay.
No, Xbox. So Xbox went down too. It did for a lot of people. Xbox was down too. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yep. Then that's serious. Why wasn't this the top story?
Oh my gosh.
See.
Wait, was Paint down too? Could I not access my Paint file?
Paint is down. We have a Paint down.
You couldn't even download the Java SDK because of this? Come on.
No, it was bad. It was real bad. And what makes these things worse all the time is the portal is down too. So Microsoft Online was saying to people, go here and you can see what's going on. And everybody's like, yeah, that's down too, right?
When the page doesn't come up, that's how you can see what's going on. See?
I know.
Something's wrong.
I'm like, yeah.
So they need to have like some sort of way to update people without it being affected by. It's just a classic HTML page. It's just
right. No, they had a second page. They're like, okay, well, we're putting up a second page because the first page is down, and I'm like, yeah, and the second page is down also.
Oh no, this is terrible.
Second page was written in Java.
Exactly. Let's blame Scott McNeely somehow for this, right?
Oh, that's terrible.
So it's like. I'm not going to equate it to their last outage, which was 14-hour outage in mid-March that had to do with authentication around Azure AD.
Right.
But still, this was pretty bad because Microsoft admitted it was a global outage. And if I did get to see the status page at one point, and there were red boxes across the entire world on Azure infrastructure. So I'm like, yeah, everything is down pretty much. Right.
Man.
Yeah.
It was like a COVID map.
It's funny because some people could see things. Like there was a guy in Brazil who's like, I can see the status page. I'm like, okay, so
that's
some
funny.
People can see it, but most people I'm seeing on Twitter could not.
Is there somebody out there, some mathematician out there who every time one of these kinds of things happens, pulls out their pencil and calculates how much money was lost and how much
I'm sure.
Productivity was lost and all these things.
People like to point, well, what about the service level agreement, right? Like if I have this, don't you have to pay me, Microsoft, for my downtime?
Yeah, they send you a check. That's exactly how it works.
Yeah, except
here's your 37 cents.
So many loopholes around them. They can say it was intermittent or not everybody was down, and some people could see the page. So there are outs for all these things. You can almost never collect.
Satya Nadella licks his pencil. He's like, "What's your last name again?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not great. And I've had people say, they're Microsoft's posting all these things lately about how they're improving Azure resiliency and how they're making all these future investments around making the cloud have better uptime and be more reliable and more performant. So what about this kind of stuff? And yeah, they know these are issues. And if you look at the root cause analysis, they say, here are the 5 steps we're going to take to try to fix this and make sure it doesn't happen again.
This is that's a trap. This is like people who are maybe a little too smart. No, it's like you could do it to any story we just talked about. Paint is finally heading to the store. I mean, couldn't they dedicate engineering resouring to making the Windows UI more, consistent? What are they doing this for? And it's like, I don't think the guy doing the Paint thing could do the other thing. It's a big company, 165,000 employees, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
They have teams of people. We can do both. Don't worry.
No, right. And they're doing both, and they are taking these outages seriously, obviously, because it dings the credibility. Customers see it. Gartner reports on it and dings Microsoft in their magic quadrant. Like, oh, you had X number of Azure outages. They don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, outages are like security problems. I mean, unfortunately, it's like the TSA, right? You're always kind of fighting the last problem.
Pretty much.
The trick is trying to be proactive and be successful doing that. But I don't know. It's been a tough couple of months, I guess, for Microsoft from an uptime perspective. But we talked about this a couple of months ago with Xbox. I mean, honestly, if you look back over the course of the pandemic, when computing resources were so desperately needed by everybody, I feel like this stuff stayed up, pretty well.
I do too. I feel like it did mostly. Even more than I bet they themselves expected.
Yeah. I mean, it was all right. And I'm not saying we should celebrate that and ignore the problems, but I mean, we need to at least acknowledge that, I think. Agree.
They did a lot of very creative things on Azure and Office 365 to keep it up for the most people during the pandemic. So they obviously are working on this all the time. So
Right.
Makes sense. This next thing I think is super cool.
I know.
And
right?
I am excited to hear about this. Microsoft is rolling out 2-phase immersion cooling in its data centers. Tell me more about this. Okay.
So the way when you first hear about this, they're like, we're immersing servers in liquid to cool them down. And your mind just kind of goes, wait, what? Right? Like how can you take servers and dunk them in something that's liquid?
Well, they're IP67, Mary Jo. That's why. That's fine.
First, obviously, it's not water that they're dunking them in, which I saw some misleading
Kool-Aid.
Headlines. Yeah, it's Kool-Aid. They call it an engineered substance. So some kind of a liquid that is man-made.
So what does the 2-phase indicate? That they literally dip them twice?
So yes, no. So when they were describing this to me, I'm like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of how you make beer.
Of course you thought that.
I have an amazing thing that it reminded me of as well, but what does that mean?
No, because there's like condensers and coils and chillers, and the 2-phase part is about how the liquid evaporates and is like kind of rotated back in, basically transformed back into liquid.
Oh,
so yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
See, to me, this reminded me of the way they make French fries in Amsterdam, where they fry them twice, and that's the secret.
Oh, there you go.
That's why they're so good.
Same thing. Beer, fries.
It's exactly the same
all the
thing.
Good things, right?
These things are all related.
Right. So the reason Microsoft is working on this idea of immersion cooling is because they want to make it easier to keep data center processors cool. And as they're processing bigger and higher power workloads, especially AI workloads, it really heats up the servers. So right now, the way they do that is with air and vapor, sometimes like spraying down water on data center floors and letting it evaporate. But, there's better ways to do this. And this immersion cooling.
Can we just use ARM processors? What are we doing here?
I know.
Is this like an indictment against Intel or something? Like what?
No. This is ARM and Intel processors. Wow. They all need to be cooler. They are pioneering this in their Quincy, Washington data center first. They've been working on this technology for years, and they've actually adopted some of the immersion cooling principles from cryptocurrency and Bitcoin mining. I'm not making this up. Yep. It's going to be interesting. They're kind of in like a pioneering phase where they now are putting it in the Quincy data center. They're going to check how reliability is and see how it can be rolled out to more of their Azure data centers worldwide over time. But definitely this is in production. Like it's considered to be in production as of now. And they are claiming to be the first of the major cloud vendors to do 2-phase immersion cooling. So Google also does immersion cooling. I guess it must be single phase because otherwise Microsoft wouldn't say they were the first doing 2-phase. And I was trying to find out if AWS did immersion cooling in their data centers, and I couldn't find any references to that, which is kind of interesting. So
it is interesting.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. No pun intended. And if you want to know more, there's so many Microsoft blog posts and research papers and lots of information that you can find on their site if you want to get into the whole how does this work and what does it mean. There's lots of
I just like that they use friolators for this. I mean, it's the weirdest picture. Seeing a rack server going into liquid just feels wrong.
Pretty weird, right?
Yeah.
It's like you take it and you dump it into a tank, right? You flip it upside down, you put it into a tank of liquid.
One of the things that I hadn't, so I certainly with liquid cooling, the one thing I considered was the fact that you are better handling the heat. But in your piece, you also talk about how it's not just that they're trying to mitigate the heat issues, but also by displacing oxygen and moisture, that will reduce the what is the word I'm looking for?
Corrosion.
Corrosion. Yeah. Thank you. That's fascinating. I didn't consider those two aspects of it as well.
I mean, I'm sure that's part of the AC you see in data centers, right? It dries the air and helps prevent corrosion. I never really thought about that. I mean, I guess if you lived in a tropical place, you could have a computer that would just corrode just by being there, right?
Yeah, for sure. And Microsoft they have these modular Azure data centers that they put on a truck and they bring them way out into the desert and, really difficult conditions. So I asked if they could do immersion cooling in those truck-based data centers, and they're like, yeah, that would be an ideal use of it, right? They could even put the immersion cooling in those undersea data centers that they were trying, Project Natick.
Right. They could call that Sous Vide or Sous Vide.
They could. They could. Look at you, branding. Look at that. Chris Capasella, Paul has some ideas.
Project Sous Vide.
I love it.
So it's pretty neat stuff. And I like all that research stuff that finally ends up commercial. I'm like, oh yeah, remember when we heard about that way, way, way back in the day? And now here it is being used in data centers.
So, we had heard that Microsoft was going to be reopening its campus by a given date or by a given month. And it sounds like they are sort of analyzing that and
I don't know if you're aware of what's going on out in the world, Micah, but
yes.
Yeah. So last fall, Microsoft had a target date. They said to employees that they were expecting that the whole Puget Sound campus, which is all their different facilities in Washington State, would be reopening fully by July 6th at the earliest. And it was just last week. Yeah. I mean, they had to pick a date.
We were so naive then.
They weren't too far off though, right? So now their new target date is September 7th. When they say it will be no earlier than September 7th, that will be, quote, fully reopened.
We should mention
I figured it out. They implemented this new dual liquid cooling technology so that they could send it to the processors to figure out. They sort of did a machine learning model.
We need you to walk around in this bag of liquid, and then you'll be safe from the COVID.
That also, I was more saying that they were throwing the problem at their supercomputers that needed to be cooled.
Come up with the date, the magic date.
Yeah, exactly. They put in the number and said, when do we come back? And the thing said 42. And you're like, no, not 42. What is the date? September.
Well, this kind of comes in the way, like Google and Amazon have talked about this kind of thing in recent weeks. Microsoft was at the end of March, has had a soft open for their headquarters, right?
Last week.
So some people can come back.
Reopening.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time, they hadn't changed the July date, and that seemed a little, aggressive. So September is right along the lines of what Amazon and Google are saying, I think. And although Amazon, by the way, we talked about this probably last week, but I'm still just amused by this, that Amazon is like, yeah, we're coming back to work. We're not doing any hybrid workplace nonsense. Like, we need people in the office. which is very interesting for a tech company. Although
No
obviously a
kidding.
big part of their business is more like logistics or whatever. But
still,
Google and Microsoft will be like, oh yeah, no, we're going to do hybrid. People will be working
know.
from home. There'll be some coming in.
Right.
Maybe some people will come in sometimes.
exactly. Yeah.
Amazon's like, no, they're coming back.
I've got some friends who live and work in Southern California in like movie industry, and they all work for different foundries and stuff like that. And all of them have gotten in recent days surveys about what people want. Are you more likely to want to come in? Are you da-da-da-da? And most of it is saying hybrid. Kind of seems to be the largest portion, but one of my friends at his place there was, after the survey at the end, there's like an extra comment box, and he said enough people wrote in the extra comment box, if you make us come back, we're going to quit. That
really?
They actually noted that. The company was like, hey, we heard from plenty of you.
I thought you were going to say the opposite.
Wow.
I thought you were going to say that they were writing in like, if I have to see my family another day, or something to that effect. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's different when, if you think about, for those folks, a lot of times it is single, they're in front of a computer doing their thing.
Right.
And so it's very solitude kind of work versus some of us. When I used to work as a, not a specified journalist, as a tech journalist, but back in the day when I was a more general journalist and worked in a newsroom, I mean, you're constantly communicating with other people, and you're communicating with producers and editors and all that kind of stuff. And if I was still doing that job, I would have craved to be back in that environment, because I think it makes for better news. But I wonder if, since these folks are already used to a more solitude, solitary work,
I think hybrid can work fine for a lot of people. Obviously, there are certain cases where you have to be in an office or can't be in an office or whatever it is. But even in my tiny company, I think of this a lot these days, because we haven't seen these people now in 15 months or whatever. But we have virtual meetings every week, and discussions happen. I don't feel like anything happens for the most part. Sometimes you really just need to be in a room with people to hash something out and get it done, Yep. And it doesn't have to happen every Wednesday or every Friday or whatever it is, or, every month even, but, sometimes. So hopefully those people that are working from home in the future will have that opportunity to come in sometimes, on whatever schedule. And hopefully it's the schedule that they want, right? Not that their employer is demanding.
Yeah. One of the things, and this is a little off topic, but I hadn't considered this, is someone was kind of advocating for reminding people who are in charge of businesses, who are upper level executives, to be mindful of the fact that all this period of time when folks were not in the office, not to think of that as vacation time, that when we all come back, that when we do come back.
I have PTSD. Vacation time. I mean, the first time someone touches me out in public, I'm going to flinch.
Right.
What do you mean? Like I was shot or something. To just be mindful of that, because people are going to want to take vacations just because at the same time as you're getting to be back in the office, that also means that travel is more opening. And so I thought that was something that I really hadn't thought about personally, was there may be that thought that, now we're back in the office, we want to get back to work and do all this stuff, but people are going to want to go and it's going to be so tiring to go anyplace though. It's like, do I have shoes? Right. Is that a thing? I used to have things what were those things I put on my legs? Pants? Yeah.
I know.
Do I have those? Just buried.
No, we were all in these. I shouldn't speak for you guys, but I had this whole routine when I traveled, and I just knew where things were, and I could pack my bag in 20 seconds, boom, 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 boom. Okay. And now I'm like, how long is it going to take me to pack my bag for the first time when I have to go on a plane?
Exactly. No, I on that, we went on a driving trip to DC, and I was like, I'm so nervous I'm going to forget something, even though I can load the car up with everything I own. I'm not getting on a plane, so I don't have to worry about everything fitting in a bag or whatever. But it's going to, there are these muscles we have not exercised at all. And it used to be second nature to us. And now it's not. It's weird.
Well, I've also talked to some people who work at Microsoft who said, a lot of people just portray it as, why is the big bad company making people come back? But some people want to go back because their home situations are not conducive to them getting work done, right? Like I'm lucky. I live by myself in my own apartment, but if I had other people in here, I would be like, yeah, get me back in the office, right?
Well,
I would.
So I'm lucky in that my kids are older. They're basically adults now. So my wife and I have often said, man, I don't know how we would have done this with little kids. I mean,
yeah,
I've had a lot of people say, I've been working from home for 25, whatever years. And obviously my kids were not born, at the beginning, and then they kind of came along and like, how did that work? And my kids always knew to not come in the office if the door was closed and to be quiet if I was working and all that kind of stuff. They were very good about it, but they also went to daycare and school every day, right? During the week, which is, when I typically work, right, during the week. So that's something that was taken away from people. So not only are you working on top of your family, but if you have little kids, I can't even imagine the nightmare of this,
I know.
The awfulness.
Guys, this just in. Would you like to hear this just in?
Is it out? Windows 10?
The new Windows 10 build is out.
Oh,
yes.
Play the horns.
How many new features? 17, 25, 30?
They're very incremental.
I see.
Yeah, like new personalization options for news and interests on the taskbar is one. Improvements to display settings. But then the inbox app update section, it says Microsoft Paint is now in the store. And here's the one surprise to me. Snipping tool is now also in the store and is going to be updated through the store. Maybe we knew that. I don't know.
Not through a feature experience pack.
Not snip and sketch, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Snipping.
Anyway, nothing
go.
too major. Pretty small. Build 21354 in the dev channel.
I don't even see it on their site.
No.
Yeah, I actually loaded this earlier so I could check it. Whatever.
Azure's probably down for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Pennsylvania Azure is down. So Microsoft Build, it's scheduled for next month, the end of next month. It will be virtual.
Yeah. Right. This month, Micah.
Oh, I thought it was May.
Oh, no, sorry. You're right. I'm already thinking of May. I'm already we're in May now, right? Sorry. Woo. You're right.
Don't make April go away on me. Oh, I about had a heart attack there.
No, I'm like, aren't we already in May? No, we're not. Okay, I'm an idiot.
Thank goodness.
No, you're right. Yeah, May. So this date was leaked a few times, but Microsoft never would verify it until last week. May 25th to 27th. Okay. And my guess why they wouldn't talk about it is Google just announced the I/O dates today, and my guess is they were trying to wait to see when that was. Maybe.
Yeah, we've had some overlap problems in the past.
Yeah,
and last year Google didn't do I/O. Have I/O,
no,
right? They didn't even do it.
Not.
Yeah,
right. Yep. So now it's going to be Google I/O, then Build, and then what's Apple's thing called?
WWDC.
Yeah, WWDC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So tell me what we can expect from Build. I forget. Is this a software event? Is this mostly what they announced?
Developers.
Oh, developers. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
so
there will be
it's a
a
lot
keynote.
like I/O and WWDC in that sense.
Okay, cool. So we'll get the Satya keynote, and then you will
get
translate.
Scott Hanselman. Yeah, you'll get all those guys.
Oh, I love Scott. Scott's fantastic.
Yep.
I remember this. Leo and I think covered this last year. And I remember Scott's kind of very, it was a very casual experience as he brought people in and they talked about, is it called Terminal on the Mac, or excuse me, on the PC
Terminal,
as well?
Yeah.
Windows Terminal. Yeah, but here's my big question about Build, right? So in recent years, Build hasn't really been a Windows-centric event, right? It's been very Azure-centric and IoT and even Office developers. And then, and we get a couple sessions for Windows developers. But I wonder if this year is going to be different because Microsoft seems to really be intent on trying to kind of boost the feeling that they care about Windows again and they want people to be engaged. So maybe there will be more Windows content.
Oh, and I mean, there's also this major new Windows version coming, right? So this makes 10X. Sense. And we know there's Microsoft is planning some kind of a Windows event.
Right.
Doing it at build makes tons of sense. So
yep.
Yeah, I hope you're right. It's been kind of dry the past couple of years.
It has. So what we think is the order of Microsoft events, this is just us kind of pulling pieces together, but there's supposed to be a What's Next for Gaming event coming first, I believe. So maybe this month we'll see some kind of event like that. And then there's supposed to be a What's Next for Windows event, which could just be build, or it could be something at build or ahead of build. Yep. And then supposedly there's going to be a What's Next for Security event after that at some point. So yeah, they can stagger their news in a lot of different ways based on that schedule and kind of pull things out in different places. But I'm curious to see what they do at Build this year. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm hoping the gaming event is the xCloud thing where they bring it to Windows and the web and iOS and so forth. So well, I don't know anything about it, but that's my hope.
Right.
What do you think that xCloud will feature any augmented reality gaming or virtual reality gaming? No, all just standard controller.
They've been really down on VR, especially in Xbox, and then AR is Microsoft has found a niche with vertical markets with HoloLens. So yeah, no, I don't think so.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
Let's go ahead. Then we can move to Xbox Corner with Paul Thurrott.
Kind of a light week on the Xbox front, but that's okay. So this one is slightly interesting. Generally speaking, every month, Microsoft at the beginning of the month and then again at the middle part of the month will announce the games that are coming to Game Pass across console, PC, and xCloud, which is called game streaming or something, which is a feature of Game Pass Ultimate. And what they'll do at the beginning of the month is like, here's the X number of games that are going to come through the middle of the month. And then, of course, at the middle of the month, they say, well, here's the games that are coming before the end of the month. And it's, between those two sets of announcements, it's, a bunch of games. So this month they did make an announcement at the beginning, but then this past week, a couple of, yesterday maybe, or 2 days ago, they announced many new games that were coming to Game Pass, but only in the middle part of the month, right? So leaving open the possibility, now they're going to move to like a 3 announcement kind of thing each month. That's cool. And one of the, there's some EA stuff in there, right, through EA Play, which has really made Game Pass just extra special. But the big one is coming toward the end of the month on April 20th is MLB The Show 21 is coming to console, meaning Xbox consoles, and then to cloud, meaning xCloud, meaning game streaming, which is only on Android right now. But the reason that's notable is MLB The Show is made by Sony. And I don't know if you're paying attention to the video game space, but Sony makes the market-leading console that Microsoft competes with in that space. And that is rather interesting.
Yes, the Nintendo Switch.
No, the other one.
I'm kidding.
But, in the past, Sony has always pushed an exclusive strategy. And it's one of the complaints that people have had against Microsoft. And so over the past couple of years, Microsoft has been buying up game studios, and they're starting to they do Xbox. They'll never do like a console exclusive, almost certainly, but they do what they call Xbox exclusives, meaning the games that will run through the Xbox ecosystem on console, PC, and xCloud. Tied to that, of course, is this notion of crossplay, the idea that you could be in a game on an Xbox and you could be playing against someone on a Switch or a PlayStation or whatever. Shouldn't matter, right? Sony was really violently against this for a couple of years there. And they prevented Minecraft from doing crossplay for a couple of years. Eventually they subsided on that, thank God. But MLB The Show is going to be crossplay. Like it's going to do 4K 60 frames a second on the Xbox Series X and S. And you're going to be able to play against people on other platforms. It's like they've come full circle. So here's Microsoft, copying what Sony's doing. And now here's Sony copying what Microsoft's been doing. And nice. So that's good news for gamers, I would say.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, kind of weird.
I think that brings us to the tips and picks section of the show. It is time for tips and picks. And it begins with a tip of the week.
So we were just talking about this notion of what I believe will be a USB-C webcam from Microsoft that will support Windows Hello. It is rather odd that to date there have been very little Windows Hello compatible peripherals. I know there's been a couple of Intel webcams. I can't recall any fingerprint readers. Typically, when you get these capabilities in a new PC, it's because they came with the PC. So laptops will either provide the webcam or the fingerprint reader or both, and that's it. And if like I'm using a desktop computer, it doesn't have those kinds of things. It's just, you just don't get it. And I always wondered, why isn't there like a really big market for this stuff? It seems like there would, this would be a viable thing for companies to do. So I think it was last week, Kensington, which is kind of one of the bigger hardware peripheral makers, I guess, announced a Windows Hello compatible fingerprint reader called the Verimark desktop fingerprint key. And actually I might be able to, so I have one. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, nice.
Is that, that's the front. It's just a little, USB thing. And it's awesome. it's awesome. It works great. Awesome in the sense that it just works, right? So it's super fast and accurate. Unfortunately, the little computer I'm using, it's a little Intel NUC, so it's kind of like a Mac Mini or whatever. It doesn't have that many ports, so I'm plugging it into like a USB port in the front, which is not the ideal thing for me. I'm I'd like it to be a little neater than that, but whatever. But for testing purposes. My understanding is that there are actually two different versions of this, even though Kensington never communicated that to me. The version that I have retails for somewhere around $70, $75, somewhere in that price range. I believe you can get something from them that is the same thing for closer to $50. Maybe it's the length of the cable or something or whatever. But if you're looking to add Windows Hello capabilities to an existing computer that doesn't have it, I wouldn't bring this on the road with a laptop necessarily, but if you just want to do it for your home computer or whatever, it works great. It's really, really good.
Cool.
And then for some reason I clicked on Mary Jo's link and I brought up something that I'm like, what is this? Something with Jeremy in it. Anyway, and then the app pick this week is Parallels 2box 4.5. I've mentioned this tool set in the past. Parallels, of course, is the company that makes the virtualization client for Mac and Windows, which is very good. Parallels desktop, right? And it's kind of like a sideshow to that. They have this thing called Parallels 2box. So the latest version is called is version 4.5. It's Windows and Mac. The tool set varies between the two platforms. And it's just like this awesome collection of things that should be in the operating system but aren't. And there are probably a number of new tools in this new version, but honestly, the big deal here is just that they've completely revamped their dashboard. And if you use a Mac, it's really pretty, so it looks nice, like with Big Sur. But what it allows you to do, among other things, is collect the tools you use most often to be on the front page of the dashboard. Because now there's depending on the platform, there's 30 to 46 or something different tools, lots and lots of tools. Related to taking screenshots and downloading videos from the web and freeing up memories and showing hidden files and making GIFs and on and on it goes. It just goes on.
Wow.
And on. It's not super expensive. It's about $20. You have to. It's kind of like a subscription thing. So you buy it, you pay for it per year. So it's like $20. But seriously, take the time to look through the list of tools. I think you'll be blown away. It's astonishing. Like it's really nice, and it's kind of like this. I guess a little sideshow, I guess, for Parallels, but it's affordable and it's fantastic. So it's something to check out for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. That's a lot of different tools.
Yeah, as you go down the list, I could use it. Oh, I could use that too.
Exactly.
This is actually,
I push three different buttons to make that happen usually. So That's pretty neat.
Yep.
All right, Mary Jo Foley, what is the enterprise pick of the week?
My enterprise pick is a bunch of tips and a video from the Microsoft Mechanics team. Oops, sorry, Srirachi. He wants to help. They recently posted a video and a script about how you can use Microsoft Word and Teams to create a teleprompter for yourself. So if you are somebody who's doing a lot of Zoom or Teams or any other kind of video meetings right now, and you're wondering, how can I present so it looks like I'm looking at the camera, but I'm actually reading a script? This is the video you want to watch. And he talks in this video about how you can convert a Word document for teleprompter use, how to actually position the screen so that you make eye contact with the camera while you're reading. He talks about using Teams on a phone. Whoops, sorry, to send the teleprompter screen. Sirachi just wants to get right in here. And yeah, it's a really good tutorial. Like I was watching it and I'm like, oh, this is really ingenious how he did some of these things. And he talks about his own personal setup, and he shows you exactly his own desktop and how he does it. So the best way for you to find this is you can go to YouTube and look for Microsoft Mechanics. And then look for the particular session about Word and Teams as a teleprompter. Or you can also find a link to this on Microsoft Tech Community. There's a video embedded in there with the quick link, so you can skip to different parts of that tip. But I thought it was really smart and really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the thing about it is it's got those more general tips too that would make it useful for anybody who's doing presentations, even if you don't necessarily use these tools. I think I'm going to watch that video just to see. Yeah. I like looking at people's setups. I know. So that's a fun thing to see. Yeah,
the way he was showing how he puts the phone screen and the camera, I'm like, oh, that's such a good idea. How did I never think of that before? So yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
And now the code name pick of the week.
So this is a very unusual code name pick of the week. It's a fake code name. And there's a story behind it. I don't know if I ever told Paul this story or not. I can't remember if I did. So I've always been somebody who chases Microsoft code names, and some people think that's cute and some people think that's awful.
You know, it's weird. There's always someone who thinks something's cute and someone who thinks something's awful. I fall on the cute
side of that
everything.
Debate.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. That's the word I would use.
Yeah, I think it's fun too. And I think it gives people something to think about, right? And it also gives us as reporters a way to kind of track things as it moves through the pipeline. Well, back when I worked for PC Week, which became eWeek, there were some people at Microsoft who were very angry that I used to unearth their code names all the time. And so as revenge, after a night of drinking, a group of them together created a fake code name, and they planted it to try to get me to write about it, to see if they could trick me. Yeah. So
this is incredible.
They created a code name called BOA, B-O-A, and they wanted me to think it was something object architecture or something like that. And they started putting hints around to see if they could trick me into writing about it. So the reason I'm talking about this code name today is one of the people who was a mastermind of this fake code name recently left Microsoft, and I still like him, even though he tried to trick me. I like him a lot. And
are you going to tell us who it is?
Yes, I'm going to tell you who it is. Don Box, who's a longtime Microsoft employee. He was at Microsoft for 19 years. He's known by many as one of the 4 authors of the SOAP spec.
He's one of 2 people on Earth that understands calm, for one thing.
Yep. Calm is love. He used to always say calm is love.
He's wrong, by the way. But no, he's a genius.
He also was very instrumental in things like the M modeling language. That was a code name I also broke. And that was after he tried to give me the fake code name. Quadrant, the modeling environment, WCF, codenamed Indigo. So Don Box has been there forever. And then he kind of disappeared off our radar. And we found out later, the reason we didn't know what he was doing was he was working secretly on the mixed reality team on HoloLens and on Microsoft Mesh and the Xbox One operating system before any of those things were announced. So he was working on all of those projects, but he couldn't tell us what he was doing, obviously. Can
you tell us? So you never did fall for this, is that right?
No, somebody warned me. It was funny. I was at a party and somebody came up to me at the party and said, if you hear about anything about BOA, don't write about it. It's fake. It's a fake code name and they're trying to trick you.
My God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah. And there was a lot of intrigue in those days. We don't have as much fun anymore, I feel like. I don't know why. But Don Box posts on Facebook on April Fool's evening that he's leaving Microsoft and he's going to go to some unnamed gig starting in May 3rd. And so my first thought was, oh man, he's putting this out there to see if anybody bites, and it's an April Fool's joke, right? And so I had to like work to verify that he actually had left before I could write about him leaving. So I don't know where he's going. I know he's very enamored with Rust right now. We talked about Rust earlier.
Go figure.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he resurfaces, and hopefully wherever it is, he won't try to put another fake.
Don Box is the best, and I find it a little odd that he's not saying where he's going. You know,
I know.
Such a good guy.
Yep.
Boa.
So yeah,
Boa.
my code name is a fake code name. Boa.
I love that.
You should you should Photoshop a picture of you with a giant snake and send it to him so he can put it up on his office wall.
That would be hilarious.
No, he felt bad about it afterwards. I heard from somebody and he actually asked my forgiveness for.
It's weird because many of the ideas I have over alcohol are excellent. I'm surprised he.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Didn't have that experience.
Anytime I come up with a plan while intoxicated.
Yeah, it's always the best.
Yeah,
I know.
All those purchases I make while intoxicated, all good ideas.
You know what? No matter what he did around that, it doesn't matter because he was always so gracious and helpful and always gave me interviews and tried to help me understand really complicated things like SOAP and Rust and M. So I'm still very.
I've read his book on COM about 1 million times. I still have no idea what he's talking about, but he clearly understands it.
Yeah. Micah, you'll like this little Don Box story too. He loved to make keynotes about really boring things exciting. Mm-hmm. So one of his most famous keynotes at a tech ed, I think in Europe, he was talking about soap, and he actually gave the keynote from in a real bathtub with soap bubbles.
He also, this is the guy from Build 2003 who Microsoft wanted to hire Miguel de Casa. And they did eventually, but it was like 15 years later, 10 years later, whatever it was, long time. Didn't work this time, but he sang, he was in a Beatles cover band or whatever, or in fact, maybe you remember their name. It was something.
I know. I can't remember their name now, but yeah.
Like in the same way that .NET Rocks is kind of, it had that kind of a name. But anyway, they were great. I mean, really talented musicians, but he sang a version of the song Michelle by the Beatles, but with the words, Miguel. About Microsoft and the name Miguel instead of Michelle.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Unfortunately,
I heard that whole thing.
Criticized it, and he was upset with me.
Oh,
which I really feel bad about because he's like I said, is such a good guy. But that was on the rooftop of a building in Los Angeles,
the Standard Hotel, right?
Okay, I don't remember that. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But,
wow. Yeah, somebody jumped in the pool. Remember that?
I'm sure
where aren't our parties like this anymore, you guys?
I know. This is why I need to get out in the world so I can go to a rooftop somewhere.
Yeah, and that's a safer place to be too. It's open air still, so
that's right.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
I'd like to go dancing, but I know that I'm going to
be a while, right? I mean, before you feel comfortable doing that.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, let us move to our beer pick of the week, a thing that will make us feel a little more comfortable in some of these environments.
You'll make good decisions after this one.
Right. So you know how sometimes Paul, when he's doing a pick, he gives like advice more than an actual product. So my beer pick is sort of like that today. My beer pick is a beer that I never would have tried, except somebody was like, come on, what do you have to lose? Try it. Right. So today is National Beer Day.
Normally that's not a great argument.
No.
Come on,
today's
what's
National
the matter? Your mother
Beer
won't let
Day.
you do it? Come
on. And my comfort zone for beers, as people know, is IPAs. I love IPAs. I default to IPAs. But I'm like, you know what? Let me try something that sounds so crazy this week and outlandish that it's got to be either good or terrible. So I tried a beer from Grimm in Brooklyn called Black Forest. And when the person who was serving it to me described it, she said, it tastes exactly like a Black Forest cake, a combination of chocolate and cherry. But it's a sour beer. And I'm like, so these three things together sound really terrible to me. But especially because it's a sour and not a stout. But let me give it a whirl, right? So I gave it a whirl, and it's a collaboration that Grimm did with a very famous German brewery called Freigeist. And it was amazing. It tasted like cherries and chocolate, and it was a sour. And I was like, it works. Somehow this crazy combination works. So my pick today is the Grimm Black Forest beer, but my advice is sometimes give a beer a shot, even if it initially sounds very suspect and terrible. You might be pleasantly surprised.
Wow, good tip and interesting. What is a sour beer? What makes it? I mean, does it actually taste sour, or is it kind of like with sour mash? It's not really sour.
So it's a whole spectrum of beers. Some of them are as sour as vinegar. Literally, so sour. Yeah, and then some of them are barely sour, right? Some are very barely sour, like a little tart. The way they do it is there's a variety of ways to sour a beer, but sometimes they put things in it to make it taste sour or actually to sour it. And a lot of times they're very good beers for like spring and summer because they're light and they kind of have that little nice tartness to them. Yeah, I like sour beers a lot. Yeah.
So then the cherry part of that probably worked with the sour.
It did. It did. But then I was like, but what about the chocolate, right?
Yeah, how did they bring that in?
In beer, chocolate is often like an aftertaste almost.
Yeah. I believe they use cacao in this and maybe in chip form, but I don't know exactly how they made this beer. And the color of it was like a rust color.
Rust.
But
rust
still
is the theme.
Kind of see-through.
Yeah, rust. Yeah.
Rust has emerged as a real theme. I'm going to go look at Rust now. I got to see what the code looks like. Now I'm curious. It better not look like Lisp. This better be a C-like language.
Yeah. Anyway, I think for people who've never had a sour and you're kind of scared of the idea, like, oh, it's going to be really sour. Not all sours are crazy sour. Some are. Yeah,
that's good to know.
Not all are.
Well, folks, I believe that brings us to the end of another episode of Windows Weekly. With Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. And of course, Mary Jo Foley of All About Microsoft over on ZDNet. Thank you, Mary Jo.
Yeah, thanks for doing the show with us today. That was great.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, we kind of interact with you more offline than we used to, right? So we actually hear from you now. Like,
yes, exactly.
I don't mean to say like you ignored us before, but I mean, there's a purpose to it.
I'm not as gone in between the breaks.
Usually you'd be gone like 6 months would go by. We had no idea what you're doing. And
is he still there? Folks, thank you to those of you who tuned in in the chat. You can tune in to and hang out with us irc.twit.tv. Windows Weekly records live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 a.m. Pacific. So you can hang out there. But the best way to get the show is by subscribing to it. And you do that by going to twit.tv/WW, where you can subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. And, that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, all the places you want to go to check out Windows Weekly. Until next week, when Leo will be back in the saddle, I've been Micah Sargent, and this has been Windows Weekly. Goodbye.
Hey, if you like tech news, but you also like hearing about it from the people who are actually writing the stories, well, I've got a show for you. It's called Tech News Weekly, and it's me, Jason Howell, along with my co-host, Micah Sargent. Every week, we invite the people making and breaking the biggest tech news stories from around the web onto this show to talk to us about it. It's a lot of fun. You should check it out. Tech News Weekly can be found at twit.tv/TNW every Thursday. We'll see you there.